afternoon. My name is Rolin. I'm Swedish. I work now 12 years with the European Commission, and currently I'm working in a unit which is dealing with Sweden, Denmark and Italy. Understood that there are also several visitors from Italy here. So I'll try to make some connections with that through the speech. The title they gave me is rather complicated actually. Commission Policy Planning with a View to the Next Program Period Post-2014. I tried to simplify it and saying, looking at some of the policies we are dealing with that are related to youth today and how it might influence the use of structural funds in the next period, which starts hopefully in 2014. And will go on for 7 years. Youth unemployment is very differentiated, very different in different countries in the European Union and within the countries in different regions. So there are very different situations. In some countries it's stable low, I would say, like in Germany, Netherlands and Austria perhaps. And in some countries like Sweden, where I come from, and some others, it's on a medium level. And in some other countries, now especially in the south, like Spain and Greece, it has really exploded in the last periods. But I think it's important to remember that it's very, very different in different parts of the EU. So one has to adopt the activities that one does to the specific situations. In March this year, about 5.5 million young people were considered to be unemployed, which is quite a high number. About 20–22% of the population. But as I said, it's very different in different parts. What policy activities do we then currently work with that are somehow related to youth? Well, we have first of all the current overall strategy, the so-called Europe 2020 strategy, which is the framework strategy where EU is trying to push on its drive to develop, to grow and create jobs. Then of course we have a number of more specific policy activities like education policies for how to develop the school systems, the university systems and things related to that. We have labor market policies, how to develop the labor market situation, etc. And we have a number of specific activities that we are doing, which I will come back to. And all of these influence somehow the current programs for operational programs for the structural funds that are supporting projects like the one we have been presented to right now. And it will also influence what happens for the next period. And why did I write next activity down there? It's because this problem of youth unemployment seems to be a rather constant problem. It grows and it declines a little bit and it grows. But we have had it actually for a long time in many of our member states and our regions. So even if we take a lot of measures and do a lot of activities, there seems to be a continuous need to look on this issue. If we try to look on this Europe 2020 strategy, as I said before, its main purpose is to try to drive on the growth in the European Union, to create more jobs and to create more wealth. And it consists of some different parts. There are some targets set about the employment rate, how large share of people should be employed. There are targets about reducing the young people that leave school too early. ESL means early school leavers, and it's a target to reduce that to at least below 10%. It's another target that about 40% of the people at the age of 30 should have done a university degree. And then there are other targets which are less related here. But then the key factor in this is that member states and their regions should transform these targets to national targets that are relevant for them and look how they can develop their own situation to reach these targets in 8 years' time from now. And this is then described by the member states in what is called national reform programs, which are documents that they send to us every year. And we look into these documents and try to evaluate, to look if they are good or less good, and make proposal on how they can develop further. These proposals that we do are called country-specific recommendations. We recommend them to do something more, perhaps, and they are specific to the country because the situation in each country is different, specific. So these are the terms which we will come back to a bit later. Also, to support the development in the different member states and regions, there are some common projects which are called flagship projects or flagship initiatives, where we try to support the development of specific know-how and activities. So we have one which is called Youth on the Move, which is to support all these activities that deal with youth policies. Another one is about developing know-how and skills for new jobs. And there are others which we will not talk about here. And this is the basic idea of the Europe 2020, is that we have some common things, but the main work is done in the member states. These are the targets again. I will skip them. This shows in the middle part, you see these so-called flagships projects. And we will only talk about Youth on the Move here. As I said before, situations are different, so the recommendations we give are different for different countries. And these are just some examples on recommendations that we have given this year to different member states that are related to youth employment situation. So a recommendation can include that the member state should adapt, improve its education and training systems to better match the needs of their labor markets, so that young people that comes out from the school system have a better capability of meeting the needs in the labor market. It's to foster apprenticeships. You know that in some countries it's tradition that young people can go out and work for a few months or years even in companies in parallel to their school education, which seems to give them a better situation in getting a real job later on. And there are some other activities that we recommend, different for different countries depending on their situation. So, Youth on the Move as a project that tries to hold together a lot of activities and drive forward, has the targets or the objectives to improve young people's education and their employability, the possibility for them to get a job when they get out of the schooling system. Of course, to try to reduce the high youth employment and increase the employment rate for youth. And this is being done by trying to identify and stimulate, push actions at both EU and national levels. And this can be, as we said before in the recommendation, making the education systems more suitable both for the young people and for the labor markets. It can be about increasing the support for young people who would like to be entrepreneurs. And it is about encouraging people to study abroad or to go abroad for a job. And as we heard in the presentation of the German project, EDA, we can also see that there are forms which actually the structural funds can support this way of doing a sort of apprenticeship, traineeship abroad. I'll skip that one. So, Jakob asked me about something that was written recently in some media. Yeah. That our president, Mr. Barroso, had said something about that we will come out with a youth package by the end of the year in December. But actually a package is a number of documents. So in a typical EU way. So what we are working on, and which will hopefully be adopted by our college, the commissioners, in December, is a communication about youth employment, which describes what is being done and what should further be done in the near time. It is a proposal for a council recommendation on youth guarantees in the member states. Youth guarantee is something that means that young people should be guaranteed by the state or an authority somehow that if, for instance, they are unemployed still after 4 months, they will be offered some form of education or jobs placement or apprenticeships or similar things. A council recommendation is a document which has been approved by the member states in the council. You know, all the member states in the EU come together in the council, and when they adopt something, it's a sort of a recommendation from the member states to themselves that you all should do these things. So what we as a commission do, we make a proposal for such a council recommendation because we want the member states to say, yes, we should do this, and then we can push them by the fact that they have said, yes, we will do that. So this is why it's a council recommendation. But anyhow, the purpose is to try to push forward that all member states shall establish some form of youth guarantees over the, let's say, over the next years, perhaps 2 or 3 years. We have also made a proposal, or are making a proposal for a council recommendation on a quality framework for traineeships, apprenticeships, and these kind of things. Because sometimes, if you go into an internship, traineeship, you are unlucky and you get into a situation where you are misused, perhaps, you don't really get a task that helps you, and in the end, perhaps you don't get a reference that you can use. So we try to establish some sort of quality framework for how this should be done in the future. And there will be some additional supporting documents. So this answered your question, Joe. I knew it would come, so I had prepared for it. Now, how does all these policy things affect the work for planning for the next period of structural fund work? The European Social Fund, the European Regional Development Fund, etc. Well, in this period, there is a strong push from different EU levels that this strategy for growth, economic growth and growth of jobs should much stronger influence the future programs that we will have over the next years. And basically we are trying to do that in 2 ways. First of all, the strategic framework for how member states and regions can use the funds will to a large extent be defined so that it matches the objectives of the 2020 strategy. And secondly, through these so-called country-specific recommendations, which are individual for each country, we try to directly influence also what the member states shall focus on in the future programs. Because it's one requirement for the next period is that member states and regions should focus their activities that are supported by the funds much more. It should not be a lot of small activities. We try to drive on that they focus on a few types of activities that they support. This framework is consisting of a number of so-called regulations that specify how the funds can be used. We have made a proposal for how these regulations can be, and currently there is a lot of debate and discussions in Brussels and elsewhere, in the European Parliament and in the Council and the related committees to the Council on how it should really look. Once this has been decided, hopefully towards the end of this year, once this has been decided, Member States will have 3 months to finalize what is called the partnership agreement, which is a document where the Member State will describe how they are going to use these 3, 4 or 5 funds that are involved to realize, to make a move along this 2020 strategy, along their own targets, their own national reform programs, and taking account of our specific recommendations. So they shall deliver this document to us within 3 months, and we have then, I think, 2 or 3 months to agree to this. And then they should make individual operational programs. And these can look a bit different in different companies, but these are more detailed. They specify in detail, for instance, that they should support youth in a specific situation in a country or a region. So this is the process that is going forward. In trying to convert or to bring the 2020 strategy into this framework for the structural funds, we have defined 11 so-called thematic objectives, which defines different points of areas in your country which you may want to develop and you can develop. And this is, in the case of the European Social Fund, which is related to what we talk today here, it's about promoting employment and labor mobility, or it can be invest in education, skills and lifelong learning, and or it can be promote social inclusion and fight poverty, and or enhance your institutional and administrative capacities. So these are 4 of the 11 more, let's say, rough or overview objectives that you can have. Within each of these, there are then so-called investment priorities. So within this thematic objective you have a number. In our case, it's only interesting that there is one which talks about integration of young people who are in a difficult situation into the labor market. So here, through this so-called investment priority, is given the tool to support the kind of projects you have heard about today and other similar projects, because there are thousands of similar projects going on, and there will probably be thousands of such projects in the next period. And then it can be even more detailed. But the key thing here is really, there is a large menu of possible activities that can be supported by the structural funds. But it's very important that the member states and regions are expected to concentrate their selection of what they want to use, what they want to do. Not to spread it out widely, but to focus on some specific areas that we want to support using the structural funds. And that has to be done in close connection with, or taking account of, the Europe 2020 national reform programs and the specific recommendations that we do. So this is the, let's say, the bureaucratic way of trying to develop the future programs. However, I think it's very important to remember that this is a setup, this is a way to provide money, then to actually do the thing, to do something that youth has benefits from, or other groups has benefits from, is done in individual projects, like your film project, like IDA supported projects, and the Finnish projects that we heard about, and many, many other projects. And the success is mostly dependent on what we in Sweden call eldsjälar. If I roughly translate it, it's like fire souls. You have to sort of be burning for something. It's really what you want to do. And this is the key for having successful projects that are supported by structural funds. That there are people that want to do something, and they are really wanting to do this, and they're fighting for doing it. And we bureaucrats, we only try to provide the money for supporting that. Finally, I would like to say to the Italian colleagues that are here, since my unit also deals with Italy, we have been arranging some exchange between Sweden and Umbria, and of course we will be happy to try to arrange more exchanges. So if anybody of the Italian colleagues are interested, you can speak with me later and we can see what we will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will come back for some later. Now, James Higgins from European Youth Forum, please. You come from let's say, more than 19 national youth councils and international governmental organizations brought together.
Hello. Hey. I should say, first of all, that two things whenever I make a presentation. One, I've got a very strong Irish accent, which I try to correct. But as the Irish presidency of the EU is coming up, maybe it's good that we all get used to it. And sometimes I forget what I'm saying, but I'll try not to this time. It's a little bit unusual that I'm speaking about the use of the structural funds, because the main point of my presentation is that youth organisations don't get enough access to the structural funds. So I'm sort of going around it from a backwards approach. But we'll get to that later on. I'll talk a little bit about the European Youth Forum, what we do, what some of our member organisations do for young people, and then at the end link it back up to the structural funds and really the potential of youth organisations to make an impact on youth employment in Europe. So, as was previously introduced, Youth Forum is the largest youth organisation in Europe. We have 98 member organisations. They're made up of national youth councils from Ireland to Azerbaijan, so right across the continent, and also international non-governmental youth organisations. The Youth Forum has a number of strategic priorities, and youth employment has been our #1 priority for the past 3 years, where we've been working on it quite intensely and really focus it down to 3 issues, which have been quality internships, the youth guarantee, and youth entrepreneurship. Those are 3 things we've been working on with our member organisations, communicating it to the Commission, the Parliament, the ESC as well, and really trying to get our point across. A lot of organisations in Brussels talk about a bottom-up approach, a top-down approach. We've sort of got a round-in-the-middle approach, where we try to get the perspective of our members towards the European institutions, and also try to communicate what can be quite sometimes heavy documents back down to young people so they can understand them and what it means for them. Speaking of which, I'm going to come straight on to one of our main campaigns at the moment. This is on the Youth Guarantee, which was talked about by Rolin a couple of minutes ago. This is our new brochure, which is out. It's actually at the bottom. It just came out on Monday. I want to say thanks very much to the people here in the Stockholm office, because I had to run upstairs and download it because I didn't have it yet. So thank you very much. This is the front cover of it, and these are some of the statistics that we're trying to get across to young people about youth employment. One of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit is that no one really knows the level of youth unemployment in Europe. Officially it's 22.6%. That's the official number of young people that are registered unemployed. It doesn't account the young people that don't go to the public employment services and that people don't know about. 12.8% of young people are not in employment, education or training, And here what we're trying to do is we're really trying to show the difference between countries who have a youth guarantee and countries that don't. Of course, there's macroeconomic performance and things like that. Sweden is in what we can call the good group that does have a youth guarantee in place, although it has the highest level of youth unemployment among the countries that have a youth guarantee. So that's something else to be considered in the Swedish system. And this is a big statistic that comes from Eurofound. The cost in 21 member states of the European Union in 2008 of youth employment was 100 billion across only 21 member states out of 27. They don't know what it is in 27. And this only counts the lost wages and the social security payments to young people. It doesn't count increased levels of crime or the health implications of youth unemployment. So when we're trying to argue about the youth guarantee, we always hear about cost. That it costs too much money, there's not enough. Well, the cost of youth unemployment is huge, and that's one of the reasons that really has to be addressed. So I'm going a bit too much into policy, and I was asked to talk about youth organisations, what we do, so I'll try to get to that. One of our core pieces of work is youth rights and promoting young people in a positive way. And we work at a very much a big level because one of the sets of measures that have come in place over the past couple of years has actually weakened the position of young people on the labour market. In Greece, they introduced a new lower minimum wage for young people. In the UK, they already had this low minimum wage but froze it and raised the minimum wage for older people. And now in the UK, they're also discussing taking away the right to housing and social protection for the early 25s. This is despite the fact that everyone in Brussels and everyone knows that young people are the most affected by youth employment. In fact, studies have shown that the older population over the age of 50 have actually moderately increased the rate of unemployment since the crisis, because people tend to turn to more reliable people in times of difficult times. It's been almost solely shared by young people, the direct employment consequences of the crisis. So, I'm getting on to it eventually. When the Youth Opportunities Initiative, which was launched by the European Commission again last year, they decided that they were going to redeploy 30 billion euros of the European Social Fund towards youth employment projects and strategies to get young people back into work. And I had a quick look at the figures. 7.3 billion has been earmarked in order to do this. But the overwhelming beneficiaries of this are small and medium-sized enterprises. I'm not criticising that. Small and medium-sized enterprises represent the vast majority of companies in Europe, over 2/3 of the workforce. They obviously need a bit of support in getting young people on board. But there's been very little of that money going directly towards youth organisations. I'm just about to talk now that the youth organisations do a lot of work, especially on the first steps of getting young people into the labour market, which is their social inclusion. So in 2009, the Youth Forum realised that we were all talking about policy and decided to get some youth organisations together to do some work on youth employment. And we formed a group called the Youth Employment Action Project. We now have 17 members of national youth councils, international youth organisations, and we encourage them to have their own projects reaching out to young people on the ground. I'm very sorry I don't have it here to present, but I'll give you the website when I'm done. It's a very easy way of getting out of a presentation. But I'll give you 3 examples, which was an organisation of ours called Rural Youth Europe. Over 2 years organised a series of courses and events for young people in rural areas. In Ayr in Scotland, in rural Bavaria, and in Janade in Estonia. They received a very small amount of seed funding from the Youth in Action programme of the European Commission, reached out to over 500 young people. They did all their activities through what we call non-formal education, which is education outside of a formal environment, like a classroom, but you're aware that you're being educated, you know that there's something to come out of it. And they did stuff like CV workshops, how to present your CV, discuss the different things that should be on a CV, led by experts. They also did trainings and, very sitting down, how to present yourself to an employer, how to talk in an interview, what not to talk about, what to wear. Things that a lot of people take for granted that young people know, but unfortunately a lot of them don't. This is just one project. But it's also been shown that young people in rural areas are the ones more likely to be at risk of social exclusion, more likely to be NEET, as they're called, and really big beneficiaries of this sort of action. On the other side of the scale, we have an organisation called the European Students Forum. They organise a series of events on youth entrepreneurship throughout Europe. Their latest one is on green entrepreneurship, and it just took place in Spain, where they had a series of motivational speakers, examples of what green entrepreneurship is, and actually successful green entrepreneurs to come in and talk to young people about their organisation. And for young people that are still in university, it's invaluable to see what this is, what setting up a business actually is. And really, I mean, youth organisations are supplanting the existing formal education by giving young people the skills they need and to see what's required after the next step. And the final one is a very concrete example of what happens when a youth organisation works directly with the government. In Finland, the Finnish Youth Council had a project where they directly received funding from the Finnish government and placed young people in summer work programmes in 2008 and 2009. They're looking to renew the project again next year. They had a budget of 1.4 million euros. There was over 230 participants, and basically the Finnish government gave financial support for the young people taking part and financial support for the employer in order to make it more attractive for them to bring a young person in. And they were placed throughout different sectors, but mainly in the NGO sector. So I mean, through these projects, we can see that the youth organisations are quite serious about addressing youth unemployment. And on the other side, there's been lobbying on national level on the youth guarantee, on our quality charter for internships, and for our different policies by different national youth councils. But the one thing that all these projects have in common is that they come from the Youth in Action programme of the European Commission, which is being renegotiated. Hopefully it will have a very positive future. But youth organisations have shown increasing professionalism in the way that they deal with youth employment. And I think my point from this is to really see in ways we can open up the funding that's going to come from the European Social Fund towards youth organisations. Our friends in the Commission have already done some work with this. For the Youth Guarantee, it looks like there will be a chance that youth organisations can be involved, but we want to make sure that that's a real opportunity, because I mean, it's very well investing in small and medium-sized organisations, enterprises, and investing in public employment services, but many young people find public employment services very difficult places to go to, especially when they're marginalised young people. I had the pleasure of talking to two ladies from the Public Employment Service in Sweden at an event a year ago, and they told me that they had a lot of difficulties with young people, especially with undiagnosed problems, social problems that they didn't know exactly how to deal with. And there is a practice in Sweden and in other European countries that if a young person doesn't show up for several meetings in a row, they get struck off the register, they move on to the next person, and that person doesn't become officially registered in this 22.6% statistic that we have for young people in Europe. So I'll conclude very briefly. There is a real opportunity coming up through, hopefully, the adoption of a youth guarantee at the end of this year or the start of next year for youth organisations to get involved in the European Social Fund and the structural funds of the EU. The European Youth Forum will be there with the contacts, encouraging people at the bottom, of us wedged in the middle, encouraging the youth organisations, and also talking to the European institutions about which youth organisations can be worked with. And there is really a role for youth organisations to reach out to socially disadvantaged young people who unfortunately get lost in the statistics, even in these statistics. We don't really know where they are, but we know we can definitely help them.
Thank you, James.
Well, as a federation, I mean, you have this overview of different youth organizations in EU countries. Do you, to some extent, look around at all these projects and get the best ones and communicate them back? I mean, do you do any of those kind of work?
We do, yeah. I mean, I can give you the website of this project. It's called youthemploymentaction.org. And on that you can see all our projects listed for the different youth organisations. One of the problems we find is that youth organisations actually very rarely communicate with each other. They're very, very focused on what they're doing on the ground, and they think that what they do has absolutely nothing to do with what people are doing in another country, even though they're using the same techniques. So we're not only trying to communicate what they do to everyone else, but trying to make them communicate with each other. And because of that, over the past 2 years, we've really seen a developing professionalism amongst youth organisations in the way we work.
Thank you. Now, Peter Jansson from the Swedish Employment Agency, Public Employment Agency, will talk, tell us something about long-term strategies, but also some examples of how we can get further on with experience from single projects.
Hello everybody. My name is Peter Jansson and I work as a national project leader for an ESF project called Youth Integration. I will shortly be explaining why the head office of the Swedish Public Employment Service, the PES, has chosen to carry out this project at a national level and what the aims of the project are. In order to facilitate the entry of young people into the labour market, the PES carried out from November 2009 to the end of May 2012, in cooperation with different actors, the ESF project Youth Integration at Fryshuset, an activity centre for young people in Stockholm. The project was aimed at young people aged 16 to 24. The target group was young people who lacked employment, young persons who found themselves outside of the labour market and the education system. The aim of the project was to increase the presence of these young people in social arenas by work, study and other known forms of planning. At the end of 2011, the PS was awarded funding by the ESF to scale up the project and carry it out nationally. A mobilization path for the continuation of the project was begun in November 2011, and in June of this year the national project started at 5 cities in Sweden. It was Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmö, Skellefteå and Gävle. At these 5 locations the project continues to work towards the same target group and age group as before. The advantage of scaling up the project is that several qualitative methods can be put together, developed and tasted at the different locations. The aim is to identify and develop methods that in the future could work in all parts of Sweden. The project will be continued until the end of May 2014. In the project, the life situation of the young person is mapped in order to quickly provide them with the right help in moving towards work or studies. The aim of the project is that the cost-efficient methods that are developed during the project are to be implemented in the regular operation on the PAS. Finally, I would like to share with you some comments that were made by some of the young people who participated in our project. Looking at these comments make you realize that our project makes a difference for a large number of young people. If you have any questions or thoughts about the project, you are very welcome to contact me. Thank you. That was Rolin.
So, could you just say something about how do you, the results from these projects, how do you implement them afterwards? How do you use the results?
Thought is that we shall... the thought is that our ambition is that the methods that we're working that we see that this works shall be at every PS in Sweden in the future. So I think we start to implement some of the methods in next summer, I hope.
Okay, and what are these methods? So you try different methods and the best ones you implement them everywhere?
Yes.
What kind of different methods?
It's a new, we are just in the start of the project. It's a little bit difficult to answer now. I come back and tell you later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Petra. And could we ask Roland and Susann to, we'll try to close up here and please give us your best thoughts about what we've heard so far, and maybe a glimpse of how you think we can use this for future work in structural funds.
From Theme Group Youth, that's really a tired Theme Group Youth perspective, which is to look and to aid the learning from the social fund in Sweden this program period, and to see that the knowledge gathered, the methods used, the structural hindrances that are met, that they are eliminated. From that perspective, it's very important to focus on this program period and what we have learned and what we want to take with us for the next program period, and what needs to be developed further in the next program period, so we don't reinvent everything the next time. And what we also, as Rolin so pointed out, it's of course important with national and regional, local adaptability. But as we also can hear from the European Youth Forum from Germany, from Finland, there are some commonalities, and it is also important that they are implemented or disseminated. There has been, at least in Sweden, a tendency to reinvent the wheel. Usually when youth unemployment rises, a lot of energy and a lot of efforts are put into combating youth unemployment, and then you have better economical circumstances, and you sort of dismantle the work done, and you are not always good at documenting or remembering what worked and what didn't work when the youth unemployment rises again. So hopefully we can get a better learning structure, not only in Sweden, but within the EU system. Because a lot of effort is put into evaluation and follow-ups, and hopefully something fruitful will come out of that. You're writing a lot, Roland.
Yeah.
That was your turn.
I've reached the age when you have to note down what you're going to say. You finished? Oh, good. Well, what did I learn from this? Yeah, it was a great day, actually. First of all, the Theme Group Youth. I didn't learn much new, but I have a very close working relation with them, because they provide me with a lot of information about Sweden, the youth situation in Sweden, and some things that are also useful in discussion about other countries. So I think for some people here, the idea of how this is set up in Sweden as a project supported by ESF, but really for drawing general experience about youth situation and what you can do, I think it's something for you to think for in your own countries, back home. Secondly, the German project, IDA, I knew about it before, as we discussed. I have got some very good reports about it. But it struck me how good it is, this thing, to support that young people, even if they are not the best educated, don't have university degree and all these things, they are supported and get the possibility to move around, to move to other places and learn some things in other places. I think this was a great idea that this project carries, and which could be used in many places. Actually, in Umbria, in Italy, they have something similar, and I'm not going to talk about details, but it's much smaller, but it's in the same idea. You go abroad and you learn something, and you take it with you home, and you try to do something with it back home. The Finnish workshop project, yeah, I think in Sweden we have something similar, which is called the production school or something, but it's more local. It's a singular project. I think the Finnish one is a national covering activity, quite interesting. And then, of course, the film project, that's really what brought me to the fire souls. My final words in my presentation. I think this is the key for projects. You have to have people that really, as the English term is burning for something. And I think it looked very nice when you presented it, but I think there has many difficult moments also to push through. And I think this is a key in all projects, and we should really honor that. That's what really carries the development forward. Thank you.
Please stay tuned for
Yes, I have a question for you, Rolin.
Yep.
I mean, hearing about all these projects and things that work and things that don't work, I mean, what should the EU do to take all this information, gather all this information and, for the next program period? I mean, how can you make sure that people share this information, or what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, what can we do for that? Actually, I have some colleagues that are already working on that, and they have been doing some things. We have these networks where we are trying to combine people from different member states working with each other and spreading information. There are also tries to write about interesting projects in different countries. So there are a number of activities that try to share information, although we have also learned that it's quite difficult. Of course, we also have some other methods for trying to aggregate and synthesize information out of all these projects into our policy development. But they are perhaps less interesting in this discussion, where we try to draw out what was good and what was bad and what are success factors, etc. I think that the most important on project level for the burning souls is really exchange with other countries, with projects in other countries. And of course, as I said, we try to do it between Italy and Sweden, and other colleagues try to do it with other countries.
I think that what can be done is more focused on cross-program exchange of knowledge. I know